I was woken up by an annoying buzzing phone on Saturday morning. That's not exactly how I wanted to start the weekend. I groaned, rolled over, and checked the caller ID. My parents. Great. Hi. Miranda, what were you thinking? My mom's voice was so loud that I had to move the phone away from my ear. Mom, what are you talking about? I sat up, feeling the remnants of sleep evaporate instantly. Suddenly, I realized that something was definitely wrong. Don't pretend to be an idiot. It sounded on the phone. You burned down half of our country house. My father's voice boomed in the background, and my breath caught in my throat. What? I didn't do anything to the house. I haven't even been there for over a month. Explain it. Mom clicked something, and my phone vibrated with incoming messages. I opened the photos and gasped. The kitchen was completely destroyed, blackened walls, melted appliances, charred furniture. The living room next to it was covered in a thick layer of soot. Cheryl told us she was planning a party at the house, Mom continued. Now look what happened. Cheryl. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, I was overwhelmed with work. I haven't been out of town for weeks. It wasn't me. Really? And who was it, Miranda? Mom's voice was strained. We only have 2 sets of keys, ours and yours. The damage is estimated at $30,000, the father intervened. You have to send us the money as soon as possible. 30,000? I almost choked on it. I won't send a cent. I didn't do it. It's probably Cheryl. She loves to have parties in the house. How dare you? Mom's voice rose an octave. Your sister would never do something like that. She couldn't take our keys without asking. I laughed bitterly. Really? Don't you remember how many times she took my stuff without permission in high school? She stole my clothes and cosmetics, and last year she took my car and smashed the headlight. That's different, my father interrupted. Cheryl would never lie to us about something so serious. I said firmly. We need to talk about this face to face. I hung up before they could protest and threw the phone on the bed. It was incredible. At 30, I was still dealing with the same family drama. My parents always took Cheryl's side, and she got away with everything. I turned on the shower, trying to calm down a little, but instead I was getting angrier by the minute. I'd been helping my parents pay the mortgage on this country house for the last 5 years, when my father lost his job and they couldn't make the payments. Who helped them? Me, not Cheryl. I remembered when my parents first bought this house. They were so proud, even though it had drained their finances to the limit. It was supposed to be our family refuge, a place for warm memories. Instead, the house turned into Cheryl's personal party space. I've caught her having noisy parties there many times. But I never told my parents. Cheryl begged me to keep quiet, claiming that it would destroy her image of an ideal daughter. I gave in. I only warned her to clean up after herself and be careful. The trip to my parents' house took almost 2 hours. That was enough time to calm down a little, but not to stop being angry. When I arrived at their house, I was ready for a confrontation. Mom opened the door and crossed her arms over her chest. Your father and I are very disappointed in you, Miranda. Keep it safe, I snapped, pushing past her into the house. Where's Cheryl? I found my sister in the living room. She sprawled on the couch as if nothing had happened. But my attention was immediately drawn to her right arm, wrapped in a thick white bandage. What happened to your arm? I asked. Cheryl looked at me lazily and sighed exaggeratedly. She slowly wiggled her fingers, as if checking if they were working. None of your business, she said sharply. Mom immediately jumped up to her, putting her hand on her shoulder as if trying to protect her. Don't bother your sister, she said sternly. She sprained her wrist at the gym. At the gym, you say? I crossed my arms over my chest. Take off the blindfold. Let me see this stretching. Cheryl's face turned red, and she convulsively shifted her gaze to her parents. You can't just come here and accuse me of arson. You don't have any proof. I looked at her calmly. I didn't say anything about the fire, I replied calmly. It's interesting that you thought of that right away. That's enough. Dad stepped between us, glaring at me. Miranda, stop trying to blame your sister for what you did. I froze in disbelief. It's obvious that Cheryl did it, I said, feeling my stomach churn. She won't even show us her arm, because it's probably burned, not sprained. Mom's face turned to stone. If you don't pay us $30,000 to fix this mess, we will sue you. I was looking at my family. At my sister with her suspiciously bandaged hand. At my parents, who looked at me with complete disbelief, as if I were a stranger to them. It was like talking to strangers. Do whatever you want, I finally said. I'm going to a country house to see the damage for myself. I turned around and left, slamming the door loudly. My hands were shaking as I got into the car. Anger mixed with pain. Are they really ready to believe that I burned down their house? I started the engine and drove off, and thoughts popped up in my head one after another. How many times have I covered for Cheryl over the years? How many times have my parents chosen to trust her over me? I thought back to the countless weekends I'd spent cleaning up after her parties. Beer bottles hidden in the bushes. Cigarette burns on the furniture, which I covered up so as not to attract the attention of my parents. Someone's underwear found in the jacuzzi. Her friends were always loud and reckless. They were drinking and smoking in the house, despite my warnings about the fire risk. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. This time, I wasn't going to let Cheryl get away with it. I needed proof. All the way to the country house, I was thinking about how to get them. When I turned onto the familiar gravel road, I was immediately alerted to something wrong. The kitchen window was blackened with soot. I parked, but before I got out, an idea struck me. I took out my phone and found the number of Megan, Cheryl's best friend. Hi, Megan, this is Miranda, I said when she answered. Oh, hi, Miranda, her voice sounded strained. How are you? I know what happened at the party, I said firmly. I know about the fire in the country house. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I've already talked to the police. There will be an investigation. The court may impose fines. Anyone who was there could be charged with arson. But if you tell me the truth now, I might be able to help. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Megan sighed heavily. Okay, her voice was trembling. We were all there last weekend. Cheryl invited about 15 people. I gripped the phone tighter. Someone tried to make these incendiary shots, you know, when alcohol is set on fire. And something went wrong. What is it? I asked coldly. The flames spread to the curtains. Then on to the cupboards. And no one called the fire department. We tried to put it out ourselves. We managed to stop the fire from spreading to the rest of the house, but Megan's voice was shaking on the other end. Cheryl got pretty badly burned trying to move a burning pot. I gripped the phone tighter. What happened then? We took her to the emergency room. After that. And then you all just left without telling anyone? There was silence on the other end of the line. Cheryl made us promise not to say anything, Megan finally exhaled. She said she would come up with a story about how she got injured in the gym. I closed my eyes, feeling rage boiling up inside. Megan, do you realize that she blamed all this on me? Miranda, I'm sorry. Megan sounded genuinely contrite. I told her it was wrong to keep it a secret. Thanks for being honest, I said before hanging up. I was sitting in the car, looking at the blackened facade of the house. Anger bubbled up inside. Cheryl didn't just throw another party. She didn't just burn down part of the house. She tried to blame it on me. And my parents believed her. No questions asked. I took a deep breath, trying to pull myself together. When I got out of the car, I noticed that the neighbor across the street was on the street. He was watering the plants by the porch. Mr. Carlson. He had been living here for many years. Retired, former security guard. He kept to himself, but he was observant. And most importantly, after some kind of break, in last year, he installed surveillance cameras. I quickly went to him. Mr. Carlson. He turned around, wiping his hands on his pants. Hello, Miranda. I'm wondering if you've seen anything unusual in our house recently. He put down the watering can and frowned. Yes, actually. Your sister and a bunch of kids were there about a week ago. They made a hell of a ruckus. My heart started beating faster. Did you notice anything else? Well. He scratched his chin. Smoke was coming out of the house for a while. I was about to call the fire department, but then it stopped. The next thing I know, they're all running out and leaving like bats from hell. I took a step closer. Mr. Carlson. Did your cameras capture our property? He nodded. The front driveway, at least. It was clearly visible. Can I see the footage from that day? He narrowed his eyes, as if thinking, and then nodded. Let's go take a look. 20 minutes later, I was looking at the screen. The video was crisp, crystal clear. The timestamp indicated that Cheryl's car had arrived first. Then a few more. A couple of hours later, smoke began to rise from the kitchen. And then the chaos began. People were rushing out of the house, some even barefoot. Someone ran up to the car, holding a jacket in his hands, as if grabbing the first thing he saw. And here she is, Cheryl. She was holding hands, supported by two friends. Her expression was genuinely scared, but not because of the pain. Because of the realization that everything was out of control. I blinked. Can I get a copy of this? Mr. Carlson shrugged his shoulders. Of course. I'll write it to you on a USB stick. When he handed me the USB drive, I clutched it in my hand, as if it were not just a piece of plastic, but the key to the truth. Now I had the proof. I took a quick look around the house. The kitchen was completely destroyed. Charred cabinets, melted appliances. The expensive granite countertops cracked from the heat. The living room was blackened. But the rest of the house, fortunately, remained untouched. I took a deep breath, trying to stop my hands from shaking. And then she turned around and headed back to her parents' house. This time, I wasn't just going to make excuses. I was going to put everything in its place. When I entered the house, Cheryl was still sprawled on the couch, pretending to be a victim. My parents looked at me with obvious annoyance, not hiding their displeasure that I had returned. I think we need to watch something together, I said, holding up the flash drive. Dad crossed his arms over his chest. And what should it be? Proof, I replied, plugging the USB into the TV. The video took a few seconds to load, but it felt like a few minutes had passed. And here is the image on the screen. Cheryl's car first. Then a few more. After a while, smoke rises from the kitchen. And then, panic. People run out, stumble, jump into cars. And finally, the clearest shot. Cheryl holds my hand. Two friends help her get to the car. There was a ringing silence in the room. I turned to my parents. Well? They were silent. Cheryl paled. Her gaze darted between her parents and the TV screen, which was still recording. That doesn't prove anything, she tried to protest, but her voice was trembling, and the fingers on her bandaged hand were clenched convulsively into a fist. I crossed my arms over my chest and took a step forward. Good. Then let's call Megan right now. She told me everything. About the party. About how you burned down the house. About how you got burned trying to remove a burning pot from the stove. About how they took you to the emergency room afterwards. Or maybe we should just unwrap this blindfold and see what's really there. Cheryl recoiled, clutching her hand to her chest as if I was going to rip off the bandages right now. That's enough, Miranda. Mom intervened, abruptly getting up from the couch. Her face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. You're not a doctor. Don't you dare talk to your sister like that. Really, Mom? I narrowed my eyes. Are you going to keep pretending you don't see the obvious? I turned to my father, who was sitting in an armchair, staring at the TV, as if hoping that the screen would suddenly go out and the problem would disappear by itself. Dad? I deliberately paused. Are you going to pretend that nothing happened too? He took a deep breath, ran his hand over his face, but did not answer. Miranda, that's enough. Mom pulled me back as if I was a moody child. What do you mean by that? That we should trust you and not our own daughter? I snorted. I wonder when was the last time I was your daughter. What, do you have only one? Mom blushed, but did not answer. I turned to Cheryl. She pressed her bandaged hand to her stomach, her lips were tightly compressed. Come on, Cheryl, say something, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. It's just a coincidence, she muttered. Someone could have set fire to the house, anyone. I laughed. And this anyone miraculously left a burn on you? She gritted her teeth. You're just trying to put the blame on me. I exhaled slowly, keeping my anger under control. Good. Then explain how your car ended up parked outside the house a few hours before the fire. And why are you holding your hand as if every movement hurts you like hell? Do you have a sprain? She cringed, but remained stubbornly silent. I think it's time to call the police, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. No. Cheryl screamed, her eyes widening in horror. Miranda, don't, Mom said anxiously, rushing to me. Let's just talk it over. Shall we discuss it? I shook my head. You didn't even want to listen to me, but as soon as it came to the police, you suddenly decided that negotiations were possible, my father muttered. Family business? I laughed, but there was no joy in it. And when you accused me of arson, was it also a family matter? Cheryl swallowed noisily, clearly realizing that the situation was getting out of her control. Okay, good. She blurted out, still holding her hand to her stomach. Yes, I threw a party. But it was an accident. I didn't want the house to catch fire. Cheryl's eyes filled with tears. She looked at our parents, who were silently studying the frozen image of her car on the TV screen. I was scared, she sobbed slyly, unwinding the bandage and exposing an angry red burn running from her wrist up her forearm. Mom gasped at the sight of the wound. Cheryl. Why didn't you tell us the truth? The sister sobbed even louder, lowering her gaze. Because you always expect perfection from me. Her voice cracked. Miranda is responsible. Miranda can do whatever she wants. What about me? I have to be your perfect little girl. I gritted my teeth, suppressing a sharp stab of anger. I waited. I waited for my parents to look me in the eye and tell me they were sorry. That they were unfair. That they were accusing the wrong one. I'd been waiting for an apology for all those years when they took Cheryl's side. I waited for them to admit that I was the one who paid off their mortgage when it was hard for them, not Cheryl. But instead, Mom turned to me with a determined, cold look. "Well, now we know what happened," she said. "But someone still has to pay for repairs." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The insurance won't cover it because it was negligence," the father intervened. "We need $33,000 to fix everything." $33,000? I stared at him in amazement. "You helped with the mortgage," he continued, as if that explained something. I cut him off. "Are you serious? Are you still waiting for me to pay for the damage Cheryl caused?" "She's hurt, Miranda," Mom said, pointing to her sister's burn. "And you earn more than any of us. This is the right decision." I looked at my family in complete disbelief. After all this, false accusations, lies, video evidence, they still expected me to clean up Cheryl's mess. I inhaled slowly, feeling a hot but surprisingly calm determination fill me. "Do you know what happened to me?" I said, dangerously softly. "I will no longer pay the mortgage on a house that I never use. I will no longer be your ATM. I'm not going to be accused of anything I didn't do anymore, as long as Cheryl gets away with it." I pulled the key to the country house out of my pocket and threw it on the coffee table. I left my parents' house that day feeling both lighter and heavier. It's easier because I finally stood up for myself. It's harder because I realized that my family will never really be on my side. For the next few days, I kept my phone on silent mode. I just couldn't handle them right now. When I finally checked the messages, there were 12 missed calls from my mom, 5 from my dad, and a number of angry messages from Cheryl. I was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, wondering if I should listen to their voice messages. Against my better judgment, I clicked play. "Miranda, this is Mom." Her voice was quiet, but there was an obvious manipulation in it. "We need to discuss the situation with the house. Your father and I can't afford the mortgage payments without your help. And Cheryl's burn is worse than we thought. The doctor says she may need a skin graft to prevent scarring. Please call us back. We're a family, we need to stick together." I silently deleted the message. The next one was almost the same. Requests. Pressure. Manipulation. Not a single apology for the fact that they so easily believed that I could set their house on fire. I was about to turn off my phone, but then a new message came. It was from my colleague Jen. "Have you seen your mom's Facebook post? Call me." My stomach cramped. I quickly opened Facebook and scrolled through the feed. And here it is. At the very top, for all to see. "I'm heartbroken today. My youngest daughter Cheryl was injured in the house. Fire. And now her sister Miranda refuses to help her with medical bills or home repairs. It's terrible when your family turns away from you in a difficult moment. Please pray for us while we go through this difficult time." I stared at the screen, feeling rage boiling inside me. There have already been dozens of sympathetic comments. People called me heartless and offered to help my parents financially. What kind of sister would do that? Family should always come first. Some people are so selfish that they don't even think about it. The post conveniently omitted the fact that Cheryl was the cause of the fire. There was no mention that I had been paying off their mortgage for years. "Are you kidding?" I said out loud to my empty apartment, flipping through the comments. My blood pressure rose with each new outraged response. I clicked on the video that Mr. Carlson gave me and uploaded it directly as a comment on my mother's post. Since my mother didn't tell the whole story, here's what really happened. My sister Cheryl threw an unauthorized party at my parents' house, which I helped pay for 5 years. Someone tried to make fire shots by causing a fire. Instead of calling the fire department, they tried to deal with it themselves. Cheryl got burned in the process, Then they all fled the scene without telling anyone, and Cheryl tried to blame me. These are facts supported by video evidence from the neighbor's surveillance cameras. I clicked publish and immediately felt a surge of anxiety. It will cause chaos. But I'm tired of being portrayed as the villain in my family's history. For the first time, the truth had to be told. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Cheryl called first. "How could you do this to me?" "Stop it," she screamed as soon as I answered. "Hey, Cheryl. It's a pleasure to hear from you too. My boss saw this video. Everyone at work is talking about it. I was supposed to get a promotion next month." I shrugged, even though she couldn't see it. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you lied about me starting the fire. You ruined my life." "No, the truth is ruining your life, Cheryl. Not me." There was silence on the other end. Then short beats. She hung up the phone. Then my father called. "Your mother is in tears," he began without greeting her. "I just talked to Tom Richards." I tensed up. Tom Richards is an old friend of his father's, the owner of the company where Cheryl worked. "He's furious with you." I rolled my eyes. "Do I work for him?" "No, but he can't let someone with such short-sighted thinking represent his company." Translated into a normal language, Dad. He took a deep breath. "Cheryl got fired." I closed my eyes. "You're not calling me because your daughter burned down the house and tried to blame me for it. Is it because she lost her job? You ruined your sister's career prospects and my friendship because you couldn't just help your family in a difficult moment." I snorted. "In a difficult moment created by Cheryl? We're a family, Miranda. We have to help each other. It's funny that this rule doesn't apply when it comes to protecting me or believing me." His father's voice turned cold. "If you don't delete this post, don't worry about calling us again." I allowed myself a pause. "Don't worry. I won't." I hung up the phone and blocked all their numbers. Then I logged into every social media platform and blocked them there. I've had enough. The next few weeks were strange. Sometimes I felt guilty. I was wondering if I'd gone too far with public exposure. But then I remembered how quickly they accused me. They didn't apologize, even when the truth came out. How they still expected me to pay for Cheryl's mistake. Work has become my refuge. I threw myself into projects, stayed late, and took on additional assignments. My boss noticed everything. "Okay, Miranda." "What is it?" he asked after a particularly long day. "Just family matters," I replied, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. He nodded. "I saw something on Facebook. I didn't want to pry into other people's business." "Everything is fine." "It's probably public now," I sighed. "Sometimes family is not what you need," he said with a sad smile. I looked at him in surprise. "Tell me about it." "My brother hasn't spoken to me for 15 years because of the lawn mower." I blinked. "Lawn mowers?" "Yes. It was rented, and I accidentally damaged it." He never forgave. I couldn't help but chuckle. Family can be difficult. He just nodded, and then let me go home early. The following months were surprisingly peaceful. My phone was silent. No more guilt-inducing calls from parents. No more angry messages from Cheryl. I blocked them on all platforms, and for the first time in many years, I felt like I was breathing fresh air. I completely focused on my work, and it paid off. My superiors noticed my involvement. I earned praise and even received a small bonus. And on weekends, I started dating Craig from the marketing department. He was thoughtful. No drama. Exactly what I needed after the chaos in my family. One evening, as we were walking through the park, He looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." It was like throwing off a heavy backpack that she had been carrying for years. I smiled. That's exactly how it feels. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending on my family's problems until I stopped. Every month, I watched my savings grow. The money that used to go to my parents' mortgage was now being saved up for my future. I started looking through the apartment listings, imagining a place that would be mine alone. About 4 months after all this, Aunt Susan called me. She was always the most sensible of the family. We kept in touch, no matter what. "Miranda, darling, how are you?" Her voice was warm, concerned. "I'm fine, Aunt Susan. Actually, it's very good. I'm glad to hear it." She paused, and I sensed that she was hesitating. "I thought you might want to know what's going on with your parents and Cheryl." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say, "I don't care." But curiosity got the better of him. "What's going on?" "They couldn't handle the mortgage payments on the country house." I froze. "Your father was trying to fix the fire damage himself. Did a pretty terrible job, to be honest. After all, they sold the house last month." Oh. I wasn't sure how to feel. They barely raised enough to cover the debt. "They're very upset about losing their job," sighed Aunt Susan. "Not that they'll ever admit who's been keeping them afloat all these years," I muttered. I went to the window, looking out at the lights of the evening city. "What about Cheryl?" Aunt Susan hesitated. "This is a completely different story." I waited in silence. "After your video went viral in their social circle, your parents had a big fight with Tom Richards. Cheryl's boss, right? And an old friend of my father's?" "Exactly." I crossed my arms over my chest. "Well, things went badly. Very bad. Tom told your dad that Cheryl had problems at work long before that. She was constantly late, delayed dinners, and missed important meetings. The fire was the last straw." I wasn't surprised. Cheryl always expected special treatment. In the end, she quit. I blinked at him. "So she wasn't fired?" "Officially, no. But they made it clear to her that it was better to leave on her own." I nodded. "And where is she now?" Aunt Susan paused. "Works as a salesman at a shopping mall." I raised an eyebrow. "Which store?" "In the very expensive boutique where she used to buy clothes." I couldn't help but smile. "It's ironic." "Very much," my aunt agreed. But it wasn't enough. She couldn't afford her apartment anymore, so she moved back in with her parents. I exhaled. At least now Mom and Dad can see what she really is. "They've already seen it," Aunt Susan said softly. "Your mom says that the house seems very small lately." I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Not because she wanted them to suffer, but because for the first time there were consequences for their actions. "What about you, Miranda?" Aunt Susan asked softly. "Are you okay with the money? I know you've invested a lot in mortgages." I smiled, feeling how easy this answer came to me. I'm better off than just saying okay. I honestly told her that I was saving up for my own place. That I started dating someone good. That for the first time in a long time, I care only about myself and not about everyone else. "Good for you, dear," Aunt Susan said. "Sometimes family is important. But not at the cost of your own life." A week after talking to Aunt Susan, I found myself at the mall looking for a birthday present for Craig. I was wandering between the shops when I saw a familiar sign in front of me. Boutique of expensive clothes. The one where Cheryl was working now. Curiosity got the better of him. I walked in, pretending to look through the sales counter. And that's when I saw her. Cheryl was folding sweaters by the window. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail instead of perfectly styled. She looked tired. The dark circles under my eyes stood out even from where I was standing. Our eyes met. For one brief moment. Cheryl's face tightened, and her jaw clenched. Then she just turned away. Without any confirmation. No nod, no greeting. Not even angry, just not at all. She went to the far end of the store and disappeared through a door marked "Employees Only." I didn't follow her. And she didn't scream. What's the point? We were strangers. Now we were connected only by blood and bad memories. I took the shirt I was supposedly looking at off the hanger, hung it back up, and left the store without buying anything. That evening, I sat in silence for a long time, thinking. The country house was gone. The place where we spent the summer. Where I learned to swim. Where Dad taught me how to make a bonfire. A place I paid for but didn't enjoy. The place that Cheryl almost burned to the ground with her recklessness. I felt a moment of grief. Not about family. It's about what she could be like. If there was mutual respect and honesty in it, and not favoritism and lies. Later, Craig came to my place with a takeaway, and I told him about Aunt Susan's call and how I saw Cheryl at the mall. He listened attentively, and then asked, "Do you regret cutting them off?" I've been thinking about this for a long time. I went over everything in my head: false accusations, court threats, Facebook post, blackmail, pressure, deception. I replayed the years of neglect. And finally she answered, "No." I put the glass of wine on the table and continued. "I'm sorry it came to this. I regret that they have never seen how unfair they are. But I don't regret standing up for myself." Craig nodded, not taking his eyes off me. "You deserve better than being someone's ATM and scapegoat." I chuckled. "I'm learning this." That evening, I opened my laptop and began to study apartments more seriously. Something with good natural light. Maybe with a small balcony where I could grow plants. A place that would be mine. Paid for with my money. Chosen by me. For me. My phone vibrated. I looked at the screen. A message from Mom. How? I blocked her number. But somehow it came anyway. The text was short. "We miss you. Please call us." I stared at the screen without moving. My fingers hovered over the delete key. I was thinking about Cheryl at the store, who hadn't said a word to me. About the parents who blamed me without hesitation and used me when it was convenient for them. About the years spent trying to earn their love and recognition. And then deleted the message. No response. Some bridges, once burned, should remain that way. My life was moving forward. Now unencumbered by other people's expectations and mistakes. For the first time in many years, I was free to build my own future. Without guilt. No strings attached. And it seemed brighter than ever. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.